The epidemic is upon us. The Chinese coronavirus has made its way to the United States, and everybody is freaking out. But for the most part, you shouldn't freak out. This is very much like SARS virus. And so right now, my understanding is that it causes basically pneumonia. There's no treatment. There's no vaccine. If you get sick, drink fluids. I'll tell you this. Most people, even if they got this, probably wouldn't know. They'd assume they had the flu and they would drink water or Gatorade or chicken soup or whatever, and then they would sweat it out. That's probably what's going to happen. However, there is an important consideration before I read this. I'll give a warning to everybody. I was reading, and I don't know if this is true. It was on CNN. They just basically said that the other coronavirus, the similar viruses can result in stillbirth for pregnant women. So if you're a pregnant woman, you got to be really careful about this. There's no way to prevent it. So it's now here in the U.S. I think this is just another one of these big outrage stories. I'm not super worried about this. However, there has been a meme going around at the launch of the year 2020, where it was basically there was an epidemic in 1720, 1820, 1920, kind of in 1920. And so the meme is that in the 20s of every decade, there's some kind of epidemic. And so everybody should be afraid that this could be it, the big one. I really don't think so, though. But I actually have the list of epidemics. I'll show you. But first, let's see what's going on with this Wuhan coronavirus. CDC confirms the first U.S. case. They say the United States has its first confirmed case of a new virus that appeared in Wuhan, China last month. The U.S. CDC announced Tuesday the virus has already sickened hundreds and killed 6 people in Asia. The male patient is in isolation at Providence Regional Medical Center in Everett, Washington. He is a resident of Snohomish County in Washington. The man traveled from Wuhan to Washington, but said he did not attend the animal markets where many of the patients were infected. Officials are compiling a list of people the patient may have had contact with since his return to the United States. The Wuhan virus can spread from person to person, but not nearly as easily as viruses such as measles or influenza. The CDC is not identifying the patient. The CDC also announced on Tuesday that it will start screening passengers flying directly or indirectly from Wuhan to Hartsfield. They'll start screening passengers flying directly from Wuhan to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport and Chicago International Airport. On January 17th, the CDC began screening passengers arriving from Wuhan to JFK in New York, followed by Los Angeles. So it sounds like they're basically targeting the big hubs for now. The student in Washington has it. I really don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But considering the glorious, glorious meme about the 20s and their epidemics, I thought it'd be fun to at least talk about. But for real, I got to tell you guys, you get sick, you drink your soup or your Gatorade, I don't know, whatever home remedy you got, chill, you sit back, watch some glorious impeachment on the TV, which I am absolutely ignoring and will not be talking about, at least for now. You can be entertained by that. No, I got to be honest. The impeachment thing is a mind-numbing nightmare. They're just saying the same things over and over again. See, now I'm talking about it. Let's go over to the list of epidemics on Wikipedia. This is funny. So I'm going to go back in time, and let's take a look at 1620s and see if there's any in the Americas. I mean, the meme is kind of dumb because, look, you've got in South America 1600 to 1650. That's kind of a long time that encompasses the 20s. So there was Italy, England, China. The 13 colonies was 1657, but I don't see anything in the colonies. So let's go to 1720s. Here we have the 13 colonies, 1721 to 22. Why, in fact, there was a smallpox epidemic. Oof, that's gross. I don't want to look at that. In the 1720s, dare I say, right in the beginning of the 1720s, we saw a nasty epidemic of a very serious illness, smallpox. But let's travel up 100 years and hit 1820. My stars and garters, United States, yellow fever. I'm going to tell you something. Yellow fever is bad, but my understanding is it's not that bad. I mean, I think it has like a decent mortality rate. So like, seriously, be careful. When I traveled to Venezuela, I had to get like 3 or 4 shots and I got yellow fever. But what I was told was that if you don't get it, it's like you'll get sick and it's a bad sickness like the flu, but then you mostly get over it. It's mostly about if you're older or have a compromised immune system, you want to be inoculated. But I will tell you something, man. For the longest time, diseases have essentially culled the human population by the weak, dying from the illnesses. And then, it essentially acts in a rather evolutionary kind of way to harden our immune systems. But now, thanks to the glory of technology, we don't have to rely on that anymore. We can make ourselves immune to a lot of these things, which is the glorious invention of vaccines. Yes, I received several before going. And then we go towards the 1920s. I do not believe there was really anything in the U.S. in the 1920s, though there was a worldwide Spanish flu epidemic. So I think the answer is yes. The Spanish flu did heavily impact the U.S., to my understanding. But that was the end of the teens into 1920. But I think it's fair to say this could be it. The great and serious epidemic that wipes out. No, I really don't think so. But it is having an impact on China. So I'll just read a little bit more about this. And I don't know. This was kind of a silly segment, but I think it's worth covering. The lead, of course, being that we now have this in the U.S. So again, I will stress this point. If you're pregnant, planning on being pregnant, if your wife, sister, mother, friend, anybody you know is pregnant, they got to be careful about this because this was resulting in stillbirths. It was actually killing the babies. From the Financial Times, they say China is battling to contain the outbreak of the SARS-like coronavirus as new cases were detected around Asia. And the first evidence of human-to-human transmission of the illness triggered a stock market sell-off. It's only 200 people, but everyone's freaking out over it. After a case had been identified in Thailand and South Korea, a new outbreak was detected in Taiwan on Tuesday and in Australia. A Brisbane man was isolated at home when he reported flu-like symptoms after arriving from Wuhan in China. He was later released after showing no symptoms, but the government was awaiting definitive test results. China's National Health Commission on Monday also confirmed the first cases of human-to-human transmission of the coronavirus that has fueled concerns over the spread of the disease, which has infected 308 people. Okay, so I was wrong. Still, 308 people, not that much. Killed 6 people in China ahead of the start of the New Year break this weekend. So you can see this map of where there are suspected cases and diagnosed cases, mostly in the Wuhan area. In Wuhan, authorities have stopped people with fever and other flu-like symptoms from traveling at airports and train stations. The World Health Organization has scheduled a meeting of its emergency committee for Wednesday to discuss the outbreak. Russian authorities have strengthened border controls in an attempt to limit the spread of the virus, according to statements from Deputy Prime Minister Tatiana Golikova, reported by the state-run RIA Novosti news agency. Russia shares 4,209-kilometer border with China and is a popular destination for Chinese tourists and business people. India, Nigeria, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, and the U.S. have also implemented enhanced screening at airports and other ports of entry, according to the Associated Press. Let's talk a little bit about disease. You may have played the game, was it Plague Inc.? I love that game. It's fun. I haven't played it in a while. But let's talk about Epidemic and zombies. 'Cause I'll tell you this. This virus right here seems to not be an actually effective virus, though it's not the worst. What people don't seem to understand is that a good virus goes undetected for a long time. So when you watch all of these zombie movies and they talk about, like a zombie bites you and then you get the virus and you turn to a zombie, that would never happen. Because the moment someone started screaming and vomiting blood or something gross and biting people, they would be put down and the virus would be contained very, very quickly. I always found it pretty fascinating that in zombie movies, they have this idea that direct transmission of bodily fluids would be a fast way to transmit a disease. It's not. It's why Ebola doesn't travel very far. Airborne. Now that would be scary. If they did something that was like an airborne zombie virus, it's full on panic mode. Because now it's like someone coughs and all of a sudden 20 people become zombies. That's a good virus. So my understanding is that there's a lot of viruses. I'm not a virologist or a doctor or anything. That we actually have a ton of viruses within us that don't really damage our bodies. So they get to carry on propagating and living. That's a good virus. So what we really want to be scared about is silent viruses, diseases that you'll contract that don't activate very, very quickly and have not super severe symptoms immediately, right? So if we actually started seeing the rise of a virus or some kind of bacterial infection that had a minor sickness, and then a week or two later, all of a sudden your insides were liquefying, that would be really bad because people could be transmitting the disease and no one would know. In this case, people start displaying symptoms right away. And so, you know what, man, I grew up with this stuff, and you probably did too, where there was always some kind of new bird flu or pig flu or SARS or some disease that never mattered, never did anything to anybody that we knew, and everyone was freaking out about it, and they're doing all these screenings, and they're telling everyone to get vaccinated, and then nothing would ever happen. Well, admittedly for this, there's no vaccine. So what I think is really, really funny is that we hear there's a stock market sell-off. It actually shows in the Financial Times. I understand it's the Financial Times. But come on, man. Seriously? Hong Kong stocks knocked off strong run because people heard about this freaky new virus. I think for the most part, nothing's going to happen. Humans have pretty decent immune systems. The people who get the sickness, 6 people have died. My heart goes out to the families and the people who've lost their lives. But that's a microscopic fraction. That's like what is it? 2%? 2% of the people infected. That's actually, that's probably like a decent mortality rate when you consider like the common cold doesn't really kill anybody and the flu tends not to. No, I'm sorry. Actually, the flu does. The flu takes out a lot of people. So I wonder if these were like elderly or whatever. Anyway, I wanted to talk about how it's come to the U.S. and just give you that general update and that warning and the funny meme. But for the most part, I really don't think this is going to affect anybody. You're not going to see this. You know what I mean? So whatever, man. I don't know. Let's go talk about. Oh, God, I don't want to talk about impeachment. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up for you in a few minutes, and it won't be about impeachment. I'll see y'all then.